The transformation from ego to heart starts in the mind and the heart of every person, and especially in the minds of hearts of all of us, seated right here. I mean, if we're going to experience a raising of consciousness, it's got to start with people who are interested in doing so. So thank you for being conscious of your consciousness. That's a good thing. My story is just briefly, I was not a conscious or spiritual person when I was a young adult, and it was only when I moved to Mount Shasta at about the age of 37 or so that I moved into woo-woo country. So yeah, I know all that stuff was there, but I was in Mount Shasta for all the rocks and water and the mountains and trees and everything. But I was blessed with meeting being embraced by a cosmic entity whose name taken on Earth was Satara. Has anybody here heard of a walk-in? No, walk-ins are? Well, this is a walk-in who took over a body of a French Canadian named Michael Moran. And I met Satara at a party in 1992, and he was in my life as my mentor for 23 years. Now, I haven't seen him in 8, but I don't think he's on the planet anymore. But in that, in those 23 years, there were 3 entities that occupied that body. So if you had mentioned that to me before I got into it and said, walk in, oh, that's a bunch of crap and all that, well, I can tell you, it's not. It happens. And Satara was just fabulous. He is the one who turned me on to, Mark, you want to think about your consciousness? Well, sure, why not? And we used to have these incredible talks sitting in the glider chair on my lawn down in Mount Shasta and going swimming in Lake Siskiyou. And he got me started on all that. And he lived about 2 feet off the ground when he floated around. He was in that body, but as a spiritual entity, his mission on Earth was to be of service to mankind. That was his mission, and that's all he did. So he eventually introduced me to Eckhart Tolle, and I have a book of Eckhart Tolle's that I've shown people where he and I read it together and made our notations, and his artwork is in there and all this stuff. It was just fabulous. So that's what got me started on the spirituality. It was a prompt from him to come and mentor me, because I guess for some reason Spirit thought I was ready for that kind of growth. I didn't go seeking it. But that's, that was 1992, and I can tell you, I am not the same guy that moved down there. I still love the outdoors and go in for the sacred nature exposure, but I've become much more in tune with the divine. And I have a great channel, and it's open 24/7. I don't have to go to church to connect with Spirit. Constantly, all the time, and I find it here. So that's where I come into all this. I've been studying both of Tolle's books since the early 1990s. Well, surprisingly for me, Tolle infrequently makes reference to the word love. If you've read the book, you'll see, hey, he has a tremendous vocabulary. He repeats a lot of words like consciousness. But, I'm really amazed at how infrequently he talks about love. So what I'm going to suggest you all do is I go on this evening and I read passages from his book. When the word consciousness is used in this passage, attached to that also the concept of love. So when he says, you can increase your consciousness, yeah, okay, you can increase your love by that. Because I really think it works great. And really, what do we need more in the world right now than anything? A little bit more love. Strongly religious people may have some differing views on some points that we cover in Tolle's work, particularly around God. Tolle considers Jesus and Buddha to have been excellent avatars, but if you have read the book, you will know that Tolle is a little bit less convinced of the value of organized religion to our spiritual development. He actually sees it as counterproductive. So anybody who's really into religion tonight, please accept that's his opinion, and we're just reading through it. You can consider in the reading why that's the case. For me, my mission, I want to improve my peace of mind and make a positive contribution to the higher unity conscious of mankind. So I want to take good care of myself. And like I say, if you want to take care of somebody else, you've got to take good care of yourself too. I'll take good care of myself, consciously and spiritually, and then I can spread that out to the rest of the community. For me, my goals this evening are to nurture us to honor truth and love over fear, be inspired by divine acceptance, and, and gain insights into the answers to the subtitle of the book. What is your life's purpose? So you can be thinking about, his whole point of the book is, hey, think about what your life's purpose is. Try and figure that out if you can. So keep that in mind. Here are some of the primary terminology that he goes through, and just to standardize it. I'm not saying these are definitions, but just so we can get an idea what he's talking about. Consciousness. Does anybody remember who's read the book, what he says about defining consciousness? He says you can't. As soon as your mind starts to define consciousness, it's not consciousness anymore. It's mind work. Oh, okay. So this is the way he plays back and forth. I define consciousness, what I need to, as the experiential presence being takes when it is in human form. Yes, the experiential presence that being takes when it's in human form. Being, when it needs to be in human form, I think it manifests as our consciousness, so that we can deal with the world. Oneness, God, being, what are those terms? Well, I just describe it as, and so does Tolle, all that is. And those are in all capital letters, all that is. Ego, a dysfunctional relationship with the present moment. The ego, a dysfunctional relationship with the present moment. Dysfunctional, like, hey, your mind is screwed up. Awareness, a more conscious perception of all that is. Awakening, a sudden and expanded consciousness with the universal intelligence. Right, okay. A sudden and expanded consciousness connection with universal intelligence. That's awakening. Okay. Presence or now, the now moment. A typically brief stepping out of the voice in your head. Stepping out of the voice in your head. It is the arising of inner spaciousness where before there was a clutter of thought and a turmoil of emotion owing to attachment to the past and the future. Now that's right out of his book. I love that. Again, the now or presence. It is the arising of inner spaciousness where before there was the clutter of thought and the turmoil of emotion owing to attachment to the past and the future. Phew. Well, you know, I can rock that. Yeah, I see how that happens now. I have some differences with some word usages that Eckhart has in there. The word ego, uniformly, I think throughout his book, every time he uses that word, he's kind of referring to something he considers undesirable. But as I work with that word in my coaching and classes, I actually say that we all need to have an ego to stay alive. It is what drives us to eat, to talk, to communicate, to reproduce, to protect ourselves. That's ego. What we want to minimize is the overly protective ego. This is the thing that causes problems. So when Tolle says ego in the book, and I read it, I have to look at the context in which he's using it, because sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it's bad. So here's what I would use: overly protective ego, or the unhealthy ego, is really what he means when he says ego. So that applies almost uniformly. He uses the word unconscious a lot. I stopped using that word for the most part, and I use the word disconscious. Very infrequently used, which is one of the reasons I wanted to do it, so I got my own vocabulary. Ego loves that. But disconscious I like to use because it means that, well, first, an unconscious person is lacking in awareness, does not know that they have a choice with anything that's at hand. They're unconscious. They don't know they have a choice. A disconscious person knows that they have a choice, but they make the unloving choice. So there's a difference. They're informed. Oh yeah, and I'm going to choose something that's probably really selfish or damage to somebody else, versus saying, oh, I didn't know there was a choice. That's unconscious. Tolle doesn't distinguish between big self and little self. Anybody heard the term big self before? Big self is your higher spirit, yourself. Your being is inside your consciousness. That's your big self. It's committed to truth, honesty, consistency, dependability, accountability, all that, values. The little self, printed with the little s, is the ego self. The selfishness, the childness, the drive to always look out for yourself first, not be considerate of what your impact is to other people. Tolle doesn't use the capital S on self in the book, but by implication, self is always the undesirable aspect of ourselves. So keep that in mind. We're going to move swiftly from the front of the book to the back as I cover some of the philosophical points as well as practical ideas that we go through here that you can immediately impress and embrace to, I believe, make improvements in your life. And I don't want to say you can improve yourself, but you can decide if you want to improve yourself. I mean, it's kind of like if you ask anybody, would you like to be more honest? Almost everybody will say, yeah, I'd like to be. Okay, well, there's room for improvement there, and you recognize that. So we'll be working on it. I will not be able to have answers to all your questions when we have our discussion group at the end. So just keep that in mind. I don't know everything, and I'm still learning. I have read Eckhart Tolle's book, this book, 5 times. I'm still getting something new out of it. But for the most part, I'm clarifying things I questioned. Anybody who's read it just once? Mm-hmm. Did you have questions that you couldn't answer? Yeah, what does he mean by that? We're going to read some of those tonight. And finally, I've edited some of the passages so that I can read them more easily and you can understand them more easily from his writing. Tonight, I want to suggest that all of you do a couple of things. Commit to keeping an open mind and heart about what you hear here tonight. Deeply embrace any aha moments that come up for you. Yeah, that's me. Oh, I didn't realize that. That's what's going on. Self-check. Recognize your ego's voice and influence when it appears in your mind. Oh, that is definitely my ego talking. I better be aware of that and possibly ignore it. Look for emotional blockages to your giving and receiving of love. How do you block receiving it? And how do you block, why do you have reasons for not giving it? And finally, think about awakening to your life's purpose as we're going through here tonight. That's what Tolle wrote the book about. To maximize your benefit, as I speak a passage, mentally repeat the essence of the message to yourself. So if you get a message out of it and you hear me say it to yourself, make it land again. Again, we request that you hold questions and answers and comments till the time period, to the conclusion of the program. All right, launching off, the flowering of human consciousness. That's us. Okay. Once there is a certain degree of presence of still and alert attention in human beings' perceptions, they can sense the divine life essence, the one indwelling consciousness or spirit in every creature, every life form. Recognize it as one with their own essence and so love it as themselves. Until this happens, however, most humans see only the outer forms, unaware of the inner essence, just as they are aware of their own essence and identify with only their own physical and psychological form. The purpose of this book is to bring about a shift in consciousness. That is to say, to awaken. This book is about you. It will change your state of consciousness or it will be meaningless. It can only awaken those who are ready. Not everyone is ready yet, but many are. And with each person who awakens, the momentum of the collective consciousness grows, and it becomes easier for others. If you don't know what awakening means, read on. A glimpse is enough to initiate the awakening process, which is irreversible. Has anybody here been through an awakening? You know, I've had 2 spiritual awakenings, and it's irreversible. There's no going back. Yep. For some, that glimpse will come while reading this book. For many others who may not even have realized it, the process has already begun. If the awakening process has begun in you, the reading of this book will accelerate and intensify it. This book shows the main aspects of the ego and how it operates in the individual as well as in the collective. The ego will trick you and will identify with it again and again. The act of recognition of one of the ways in which awakening happens. You cannot fight against the ego, and you can't win, just as you cannot fight against darkness. The light of consciousness is all that is necessary. You are that light. Fear, greed, and the desire for power are the psychological motivating forces, not only behind warfare and violence, but between nations, tribes, religions, and ideology, but also the cause of incessant conflict in personal relationships. Let me repeat that. Fear, greed, and the desire for power. The cause of incessant conflict in personal relationships. Has anybody here experienced that kind of stress? Yeah, okay. Trying to get rid of these things is part of reading this book. They bring about a distortion of other people and yourself. The new spirituality, the transformation of consciousness, is arising to a large extent outside of the structures of the existing institutionalized religions. So this is kind of an interesting take for anybody who's religious, and he's saying, this is happening outside of the religions. I don't know if I need to stand behind this thing. We need to understand that heaven is not a location, but refers to the inner realm of consciousness. A new heaven is the emergence of a transformed state of human consciousness, and a new earth is its reflection in the physical form. A new heaven and a new earth. The greatest miracle in the experiencing of our essential self as prior to any words, thoughts, and mental labels and images. For this to happen, you need to disentangle your sense of I, of beingness, from all things that become mixed up with it. That is to say, identified with. This disentanglement is what the book is about. Once you awaken, you will still use the word I, but it will be from a much deeper place within yourself. Some people never forget the first time they disidentified from their thoughts and thus briefly experienced the shift in identity from being the content of their mind to being the awareness in the background. This is something that shows up through the book constantly. Rather than thinking that you are your thoughts, he says you're not. You are the consciousness that recognizes you are having these thoughts. The unconscious compulsion to enhance one's identity through association with an object is built into is the very structure of the egoic mind. The people in advertising know this very well. Sell things that people don't really need. We acquire things because we think things will add something to their sense of self. Materialism? I mean, how many people think the more stuff I have, the more personal security I have? Well, we learned in this book that it's actually a false concept. And so in many cases, you're not buying a product, but an identity enhancer by owning a lot of stuff. The ego satisfaction is short-lived, and so you keep looking for more. Keep buying. Keep consuming. In the proximity of death, the whole concept of ownership stands revealed as ultimately meaningless. Wow, okay. Making yourself right and others wrong is one of the principal egoic mind patterns, one of the main forms of unconsciousness. Making ourselves right. There's hardly a more severe expression of insecurity than feeling like you have to be right, even if you know that you're wrong. The ego lives through comparison. How you are seen by others turns into how you see yourself. If you are aware that you are identified with a thing, the identification is no longer total. And here's an essential point. I am the awareness that is aware that there is an attachment. That's the beginning of the transformation of awareness. So you're aware, I have an attachment here, versus living as if you are the attachment. Say, oh, I have that. And I can control it too. Many feel a diminished sense of self-worth because they perceive their body as ugly or imperfect. Equating the physical sense perceived that is designed to grow, old, wither, and die with I always leads to suffering sooner or later. Body shame. I mean, virtually everybody suffers from that. And he's pointing out here, it's superfluous. When you are in touch with the inner body, you are not identified with your body anymore, nor are you identified with your mind. This is to say, you are no longer identified with form, but moving away from form toward formlessness, which we may also call being. It is your essence identity. Whew. Let's look at that again. But moving away from form toward formlessness. How many people use formlessness in your vocabulary? Well, he's introducing a pretty rare word, I think, here. The formlessness is our being. And that's kind of just spiritual energy. So he makes a consistent distinction between identifying where your attachment is to form and where your belief is about what your formlessness is. Thoughts are energy formations, finer and less dense than physical matter, but they are forms nonetheless. Ego arises when your sense of beingness, of I am, which is formless consciousness, gets mixed up with form. This is forgetfulness of being. The primary error, the illusion of absolute separateness that turns reality into a nightmare. Confusion between our form and formlessness. When forms around you die or death approaches, your sense of beingness, of I am, is freed from its entanglement with form. Spirit is released from its imprisonment in matter. You realize your true identity as consciousness itself. That's the peace of God. Wow, the peace of God. That's quite a statement. When you surrender, a new dimension of consciousness opens up. If action is possible or necessary, your action will be in alignment with the whole and supported by creative intelligence. You become one with the inner state of openness. Now, I think there's a profound statement in here. When you surrender. Now, in my classes, we always have to clarify what we mean about surrender, because there's a difference between unwillful surrender, means I give up under force, versus willful surrender, where you say, I realize that's where I want to go, and I've been resisting. Okay, now I'll go. So this is the surrender he's talking about. So there's no regret about it. It's in fact an opportunity for expansion. When you surrender, a new dimension of consciousness opens up. If action is possible or necessary, your action will be in alignment with the whole and supported by creative intelligence. Wow. You become one with the inner state of openness. Well, it sounds pretty empty. Does anybody here had an experience where in your moment of awareness or presence or the now that you feel vacant and empty and there's just space? Haven't been there? It's a fantastic feeling. Yes, and this is what he's talking about. If we can learn to spend more time in that space, you're not attached to anything. You have severed all your attachments and you are in your beingness. People are completely identified with the voice in their head. This is the egoic mind. This is unconsciousness, spiritually speaking. Complaining is one of the ego's favorite strategies for strengthening itself. Instead of overlooking unconsciousness in others, you make it into their identity. So instead of overlooking the unconsciousness in others, we make it their identity. What a sad thing. Talk about a projection. Non-reaction to the ego in others is one of the most effective ways for not only going beyond ego in yourself, but also dissolving the collective human ego. Non-reaction is not weakness, but strength. Another word for non-reaction is forgiveness. Strength. Ego implies unawareness. Awareness and ego cannot coexist. Now that's a pretty important understanding. Awareness and ego cannot coexist. So choose. If it's one or the other, so it's black or white, like he's saying it is, just decide where do you want to exist, in your ego or in your consciousness, or awareness. Feel the emotions that is the body's response to those thoughts. The past has no power to stop you from being present now. Isn't that a beautiful sentence? The past has no power to stop you from being present now. Now. Only your grievance about the past can do that. And what is the grievance? The baggage of old thought and emotion.
The what?
The baggage of old thought and emotion. Ego takes everything personally. Ego arises, defensiveness, emotion arises, defensiveness, perhaps even aggression. Are you defending the truth? No. The truth, is, in any case, needs no defense. Every ego confuses opinions and viewpoints with facts. Every ego is a master of selective perception and distorted interpretation. Ego's not our friend, huh? Only through awareness, not through thinking, can you differentiate between fact and opinion. Only through awareness can you differentiate between fact and opinion. So many things we pass off in life are opinions, and we pass them off as facts. And it's worth saying, hey, wait a minute, now I'm not placing it in the correct context. There is only one absolute truth, and all other truths emanate from it. The truth is inseparable from who you are. The very being that you are is truth. When you get in touch with that dimension within yourself, all your actions and relationships will reflect the oneness with all life that you sense deep within. By far the greater part of violence that humans have inflicted on each other is not the work of criminals or the mentally deranged, but of normal, respectable citizens in the service of the collective ego. Well, it's not some deranged group of people. It's regular people caught up in their collective ego. Once you see the ego for what it is, it becomes much easier to remain non-reactive to it. You shouldn't take it personally anymore. There is no complaining, no blaming, no accusing, or making wrong. Nobody is wrong. Isn't that interesting? Nobody is wrong. And I have to admit, I'm working on myself these days to take the word wrong out of my vocabulary. I would rather say made a mistake, which we all do. But he's stressing here, wrong has a different kind of deeper meaning to it. It's like the word fault. It makes it more permanent. You have a fault. You know, faults, well, they're permanent. So how about just, I made a mistake versus being wrong. So it is the ego in someone else, that's all. Compassion arises when you recognize that all are suffering from the same sickness of mind, some more acutely than others. All that is required to become free of the ego is to be aware of it, since awareness and ego are incompatible. Awareness is the power that is concealed within the present moment. Awareness is the power that is concealed within the present moment. This is why we call it presence with a capital P. Only presence can free you from ego. And you can only be present now with a capital N, not yesterday or tomorrow. So again, we lose the attachment to the dead past or the imagined future. You got to be present. Oh, I love it. Must be present to win. That means attachment free, right? Yeah. The underlying emotion that governs all of the ego is fear. You might have heard people say that there's actually only two emotions out there, love and fear. All the forms of love and anxiety and anger and things that we have are either under love or under fear. So the underlying emotion that governs all of ego is fear, the fear of being nobody, the fear of non-existence, the fear of death. Only the truth of who you are, if realized, will set you free. Only the truth of who you are, if realized, will set you free. The hippie movement made it possible for ancient Eastern wisdom and spirituality to move west and play an essential part in the awakening of global consciousness. Well, you know what? You ever heard that phrase that says we were born to be in these times? So most of us were alive in the 60s. When the 60s, the hippie movement probably got us started. And he's saying that it was the hippie movement that brought Eastern religion and spirituality over to the West. So that would have been in the 60s. And that was the essential part of the awakening of global consciousness. We were there. We are it. We were alive in the 60s. So think about this. Humanity's been around for 200,000 years, the human species, and he's saying here, our global consciousness is going through an awakening. And as far as I get, we've never had one before in the history of our species. So it happened during the 60s, and we were there. How lucky is that? That's pretty cool. You may detect subtle changes in your speech, attitude, and behavior depending on the person you are interacting with. The more identified people are with their respective roles, the more inauthentic relationships become. This is in reference to a section on role playing, where she says, no, stay out of that business, role playing. Be your authentic self. There's nobody that has any power over to tell you that you have to be something else. The primary cause of unhappiness is never the situation, but your thoughts about it.
Read that again.
The primary cause of unhappiness is never the situation, but your thoughts about it. Separate your thoughts from the situation, which is always neutral. So if you think about our judgments of good and bad, these are our subjective values that we put on the outcome of some kind of neutral process. Oh, that was bad. Yeah, well, you may think so. Somebody else thinks it was just fine, or they don't care. They're all neutral. Facing facts, the truth, is always empowering. Be aware of what you think, to a large extent, creates the emotions that you feel. Rather than being your thoughts and emotions, be the awareness behind them. I remember having a very interesting debate with a man who was saying that we have our emotions first and then we have our thoughts. And it was we went back and forth on that, never resolved it, but to me, it's my opinion that we can't have an emotion about something until we've thought about it. That is, it needs to have a presence in our mind. If it doesn't, we're probably not going to have any feelings about it. So if you say, oh, but I felt that so fast. Yes, but you probably already had a thought about it. And your feeling is a conditioned response to a prior thought. So feelings don't just come out of the middle of nowhere. They come from a thought. And if you can control your thoughts, what's the indication of that? You can control your feelings and your emotions. So that is possible. Mastery of life is not a question of control, but of finding a balance between human and being. Human is form, Being is formless. Human and being are not separate but interwoven. So it's kind of like our physical form and our spiritual entity inside us are commingled, but they are separate. To love is to recognize yourself with a large S in another. Love is the recognition of oneness in the world of duality. This is the birth of God into the world of form. Love makes the world less worldly, less dense, more transparent to the divine dimension, the light of consciousness itself. So I encourage everybody to always think in terms of ourselves as being light. We are light or we are darkness. Which are we? And what are we sharing? Give up role-playing. Those few people who don't project a mind image, don't appear to be more than they are, stand out as remarkable, and are the only ones that make a difference in the world. Okay, only authentic people make a difference in the world. They are the bringers of the new consciousness. That's all of you. You're all so dang authentic, you're bringing all the new consciousness. Whatever you do becomes empowered because it is in alignment with the purpose of the whole. When you don't play roles, it means that there is no self-ego in what you do. So you're not faking it. You are most powerful, most effective when you are completely yourself. Stop, I love this. Stop adding baggage to who you already are. Hey, great. Oh, that's what a picture that is. Stop adding baggage to who you already are. All right, again, breaking all these ego and mind attachments to stuff that was just superfluous. Why does the ego play roles? Because of one unexamined assumption. I am not enough. We play roles, we assume roles, we project roles because we believe I, the big S self, I believe I am not enough. In reality, you are neither inferior or superior to anyone. The true self-esteem and true humility arise out of that realization. In the midst of negativity, you are able to realize at the moment I am creating, quote, at the moment I'm creating for myself. It will be enough to raise you above the limitations of conditioned egoic states and reaction. You will be free to let go of your unhappiness the moment you recognize it as unintelligent. The ego may be clever, but it is not intelligent. Cleverness divides, intelligence includes. Moment to moment, do your emotions create separation or unity? Where is your awareness here? Are you creating separation or unity? If you believe in a concept of oneness with the Creator or the Spirit or whatever, then you would strive to maintain unity with it. It also has to do with integrity. You start fracturing your personality, you lose integrity. You're this to these people, you're this to these people, you play a role to these people. So where is your awareness here about dividing, seeking unity instead of separation? This is one of my favorite statements. This is if you remember anything, this would be it. Peace, after all, is the end of the ego. Peace, after all, is the end of the ego. If you just imagine 8 billion people in the world who are blessed, and we just decided we got rid of our ego, think about how much more cooperation and synergy and love there would be in the world. Yeah. The stronger the ego in you, the more likely it is that your perception of other people is the main, that your perception, other people are the main source of problems in your life. That your problems arise from other people, not from yourself, other people. The collective ego of tribes, nations, and religious organizations also contain a strong element of paranoia, us against the evil others. All painful episodes in human history are dominated by extreme collective paranoia. That's a powerful statement. All painful episodes in human history are dominated by extreme collective paranoia. I'm upset, angry, defensive, or aggressive. I need to win at all costs, lest I am annihilated. That is the ego's position. The ego doesn't know that the more you include others, the more smoothly things go, and the more easily things come to you. The ego's unconscious core of feeling not enough causes it to react to someone else's success as if that success had taken away from me. It doesn't know that your resentment of another person's success curtails your own chances of success. In order to attract success, you need to welcome it wherever you see it. I know that I say to my wife, I want you to be successful. And that aligns my heart and my soul with that commitment. When she's successful, we will be successful. More successful. So it pays to support other people's success, what she's saying here. The collective ego is usually more unconscious than the individuals that make up the ego. Crowds are capable of committing atrocities that the individual away from the crowd would not do. Mob psychology. The collective ego very much at work. We move into the pain body, which is a central part of his book. Your story, however, consists not only of mental but also of emotional memory. Old emotion that is being revived continuously because of the human tendency to perpetuate old emotion. Almost everyone carries in his or her energy field an accumulation of old emotional pain, which I call the pain body. We can learn not to keep situations or events alive in our minds, but return to our attention to the pristine, timeless present moment rather than be caught up in mental movie making. Our very presence that becomes our identity rather than our thoughts and our emotions. Another good Zinger clause here. Nothing ever happened in the past that it can prevent you from being present now. Okay, so he says that again in the book. Your pain body is your unavoidable companion when a false sense of self is the basis of your life. Whew. Your pain body is your unavoidable companion when a false sense of self is the basis of your life. False sense of self. That's a pretty sad situation. The pain body thrives on negative thinking as well as drama in relationships. The pain body has an addiction to unhappiness. There is only one perpetrator of evil on the planet, human unconsciousness. With forgiveness, your victim identity dissolves and your true power emerges, the power of presence. Instead of blaming the darkness, you bring in the light. Great one. The beginning of freedom from the pain body lies first of all in the realization that you have a pain body. It is your conscious presence that breaks the identification with the pain body. When you don't identify with it, the pain body can no longer control your thinking. Your thinking ceases to be clouded by emotion. Your present perceptions are no longer distorted by the past. So the pain body is distorting our thinking because it's keeping all that historical pain alive, even though what we're thinking about might have happened 20 years ago. That's the unintelligence that he's referring to. It doesn't make sense to do that to ourselves. What are we talking about? The self needs to take control here. In the greater scheme of things, human beings are not meant to evolve into are meant to evolve into conscious beings, and those who don't will suffer the consequences of their unconsciousness. Does anybody here feel like you might suffer your consequences of your unconsciousness? Like, why in the hell did I do that? What was I thinking when I said, oh my, all that kind of stuff. That's the unconsciousness. We're going to suffer the consequences of it. They are out of alignment with the evolutionary impulse of the universe. Ooh, I love that. The evolutionary impulse of the universe. I like to reference that as what I say, as my editor Jessica would know, going within the flow of divine energy. That's the bottom line for me, and this is how he states it here. Evolutionary impulse of the universe. To me, that's like the God energy that drives the cosmos, and if you cut across it, you're going to hurt. You go with it, you're going to have heaven on earth in your heart and your mind. Not all unhappiness is of the pain body. Some of it is new unhappiness. That's cute. What? You can't say it some other way. Some of it's new unhappiness, created whenever you are out of alignment with the present moment, when now is denied in one way or another. So the new pain comes when you're out of alignment with the present moment, which also can be said as you are out of line. The now is denied in one way or another. So we're not accepting now anymore. Not so good. Okay. When you consciously recognize your pain body as it arises, you will also learn that the most common triggers that activate it, whether it is situations or certain things other people say or do. Anybody here have trigger behaviors? Somebody says something, and it goes, your mind goes out of control. That's fine. So that's what he's talking about here. The pain bodies, I mean, we're dragging around this emotional pain that could be 30, 40, 50 years old. And we have, all you have to do is hear somebody else mention somebody's name. And you have this flinch, an emotional flinch inside. Well, that's a trigger. Within a second or two, you'll also notice the emotional reactions that is an arising pain body, but that in a state of presence, you won't identify with it, which means that the pain body cannot take you over and become the voice in your head. Have an agreement with your partner that when either of you says or does something that triggers others' pain body, mention it. Good communications. In this way, the pain body can no longer renew itself through drama in the relationship, and instead of pulling you into unconsciousness, will help you become fully present. The pain body needs your unconsciousness. It cannot tolerate the light of presence. Due to the unprecedented influx of consciousness we are witnessing on the planet right now, many people no longer need to go through the depths of acute suffering to be able to disidentify from the pain body. If your consciousness is evolving and you're paying attention and steering it in that direction, your self-directed personal evolution, you can break your connection to the pain body. And people drag this stuff all around and say, it's hardwired, I can't get rid of that. My mama drilled this into me. And he says, don't be so sure. I think you can do that. You can get rid of that. Whenever they notice that they have slipped back into a dysfunctional state, they are able to choose to step out of identification with thinking and emotion and enter a state of presence. They relinquish resistance, become still and alert, one with what is, within and without. The knowing needs to be followed by accepting that there is nothing wrong with you. Through allowing, you become what you are, vast and spacious. You become whole. Your true nature emerges, which is one with the nature of God. Know thyself. You've heard that before. What those words imply is, ask first the most fundamental question of your life. Who am I? Knowing yourself goes far deeper than the adoption of a set of ideas or beliefs. Knowing yourself is to be rooted in being instead of lost in your mind. So the implication here is our self is not anything that our mind has than what we conjure up. It's a deeper experience that. Now, as an aside, for me, when I answer, who am I like to have answers to questions, and my students kind of demand that of me. For me, when I say, who am I answer with, I am the consciousness, I am the conscious being that occupies this body. I strive to embrace both the spiritual and physical self, thus accepting everything in the formless as well as in form. So, I'm trying to accept all that is, the formless and all the form, accept all the truth of reality, and if it exists, I got to accept it. If I can't see it, but it's formless and I know it's out there, I accept that too. So that's who I am. Your sense of who you are determines what you perceive as your needs and what matters to you in life. Ultimately, all things are small things because all things are transient. This too shall pass. Just think about that thing. Don't worry about the little things, just worry about the big things, but also keep in mind they're all little things. You might have heard that before. So this is what he's saying here, is that it's all little stuff. It's all small things because all things are transient. You accuse and blame, attack, defend, or justify yourself, and it's all happening on autopilot. How you react to people and situations, especially when changes arise, is the best indicator of how deeply you know yourself. And I think that's worth repeating. How you react to people and situations, especially when challenges arise, is the best indicator of how deeply you know yourself. If the thoughts of lack, whether it be money, recognition, or love, has become part of who you think you are, you will always experience lack. Recognizing the good that is already in your life is the foundation for all abundance. Recognizing the good that is already in your life is your foundation for all abundance. Give, and it will be given to you. The acknowledgement of the abundance that is all around you awakens the dormant abundance within you. Both abundance and scarcity are inner states that manifest as your reality. Here's what I call a mind twister. Whatever you learn through psychoanalysis or self-observation is about you. It is not you. It is content, not essence. Knowing yourself is being yourself, and being yourself is ceasing to identify with content. So here's a challenge. Discern content, your mind, from essence, your being. So I like, that little phrase right there. I have to read that over and over again. So read the book if you haven't seen this one. That's on page 193. Behind the sometimes seemingly random or chaotic succession of events in our lives, as well as in the world, lies concealed the unfolding of a higher order and purpose. Order emanates from the formless realm of consciousness, from universal intelligence. We can align ourselves with it, which means being conscious participants in the unfolding of the higher purpose. Everyday example of finding alignments in chaos, online dating. There's millions of single people out there. How am I going to find anybody? They're like, where can I find my alignments? Well, you go to an online dating service, and there's a funnel that brings people with similar interests all into line and say, yeah, here they are. So that exists in the midst of all the chaos of the singles dating scene. There is alignment there. But our ego keeps us from identifying alignments because as long as it's chaos, there's conflict, and that feeds the ego. So the ego doesn't want us to have this power. To be in alignment with what is means to be in relationship of inner non-resistance of what happens. Inner non-resistance of what happens. When the basis of your actions is inner alignment and the present moment, your actions become empowered by the intelligence of life itself. Hence what John Lennon said, let it be. Acceptance. Here's another mind twister. The master responds to falsehood and truth, bad news and good news, in exactly the same way. Is that so? So just think about responding to news. I mean, what we get on the news and all that, let's just say, oh, is that so? So that, he says that's the response of a master, non-reactivity. A non-judgmental, neutral response to all that happens, because everything that happens actually outside of our mind is neutral. He allows the form of the moment appearing to be good or bad to be as it is, and so does not become a participant in the human drama. Where is our emotional attachment? Well, here's my question here. I wonder about this. Does not become a participant in human drama. So one of the things I wonder about Eckhart when he talks about freeing of attachments is, what about love? Isn't love an attachment? You love somebody, or you love yourself, you love somebody. That's an attachment. So he's kind of making this blanket statement here that, yeah, don't have so many attachments. So I'm not sure about that. I think that the love is worth an attachment worth keeping. He is, the master is so completely at one with what happens that what happens has no power over him anymore. Only if you resist what happens are you at the mercy of what happens. Transparency. If you react to something, you're at the mercy of it. But if you're transparent to it, you can let it be. Let it fly as is. Bad turns into good through the power of non-resistance or non-judgment. Most of our resistance expresses itself as judgment. So if we can get away from judgment, we can make a serious dent in the amount of resistance we put up to otherwise neutral things. Bad turns into good through the power of non-resistance. Yeah, okay. If your relationship with the now is dysfunctional, full of judgment, and tainted by resistance to accepting the truth, that dysfunction will be reflected in every relationship and every situation you encounter. So that's if your relationship with the now is dysfunctional, i.e., you need to have a clear, truthful relationship with the now. Otherwise, everything's going to be dysfunctional. And if you think about that, we're here now, right? And if you've got a dysfunctional relationship with something, it's going to manifest in how you interact, how we talk, how we engage, how we think. Everything will get tainted by it. The ego could be defined simply in this way: a dysfunctional relationship with the present moment. Once you have decided to make the present moment your friend, it is up to you to make the first move. Accept reality. Accept all that is. Become friendly toward it. Welcome it no matter what disguises it comes in. And soon you will see the results. The decision to make the present moment into your friend is the end of the ego. The decision to make the present moment, right now, your friend, is the end of the ego. Almost every thought you think is concerned with the past or the future, and your sense of self depends on the past for your identity and on the future for its fulfillment. Fear, anxiety, expectation, regret, guilt, anger are the dysfunctions of the time-bound state of consciousness. The dysfunctions of the time-bound state of consciousness. Wow. How do you go beyond a dysfunctional relationship with the present moment? The most important thing to see is to see it in yourself, in your thoughts and actions. The seeing is the arising of presence. The moment you see the dysfunction, it begins to dissolve. So as soon as you say, gosh, I'm judgmental, you open the opportunity to step away from that attachment and the ego compulsion to judge. So that's the first step. You've got to have an awareness about it. With seeing comes the power of choice, the power of saying yes to the now, of making it your friend, only to be done by a conscious person, not an unconscious or disconscious person. If you go by direct, I love this. If you go by direct evidence, there is no time, and the now is all there ever is. So how long is the now in terms of measuring time? It's so narrow, I don't think it can be measured. But I think that's a great statement. You know, if you go by direct evidence only, then there is no time, and the now is all there ever is. So if we can recenter ourselves, just think about it. If you can constantly recenter yourself into the now, think how open and free your mind and your spirit would be. You're not dragging the baggage from the past, and you're not invested in expectations of the future. Yeah, that's great. Another mind twister. So, instead of adding time to yourself, remove time. The elimination of time from your consciousness is the elimination of the ego. It is the only true spiritual practice. The elimination of time. Whew. All right, I'm going to think on that one for a while. Whenever a habitual no in life turns into yes, whenever you allow this moment to be as it is, you dissolve time as well as the ego. So learn to say more yes than no. Non-resistance, total acceptance of reality, is the key to the greatest power in the universe. Non-resistance. Through it, consciousness, spirit, is freed from imprisonment in the form. The joy of being, which is the only true happiness, cannot come to you through any form, possession, achievement, person, or event, through anything that happens. The joy cannot come to you ever. It emanates from the formless dimension within you, from consciousness itself, and thus is one with who you are. So that's where you find happiness, comes from within. Whether the other person is right or wrong is irrelevant to the ego. It is much more interested in self-preservation than truth. One of the most common ego repair mechanisms is anger, which causes a temporary but huge ego inflation. All repair mechanisms, avoidance, denial, closure of the heart and mind, make sense to the ego, but are actually dysfunctional. Those that are the most extreme in their dysfunction are physical violence and self-delusion in the form of grandiose fantasies. Through becoming less in the ego's perception, you in fact undergo expansion and make room for being to come forward. Whew. So becoming less with your ego is an expansion and makes room for being to come forward. Excellent. If you are content with being nobody in particular, content to not stand out, satisfy an ego craving, you align yourself with the power of the universe. What looks like weakness to the ego is in fact the only true strength. This spiritual truth is diametrically opposed to the value of our contemporary culture, and the way it conditions people to behave. So we are, as we all know, we are conditioned to be dysfunctional from the instant we're born. This is what our parents knew how to do, because that's what their parents knew how to do, their parents knew how to do, is to build these boxes of dysfunctionality around all of us, and that's what we grow up in. And now that we have a greater awareness of our consciousness, we are breaking down those boxes and expanding into the power of the universe. Now there's another mind twister. You could say God, the formless essence of who you are, if the word had not been so misused. I prefer to call it being. Being is prior to existence. Essence is form. Content, what happens. Existence is the foreground of life. Being is the background. So where is that going? That's why I call that one another mind twister. There's a lot of things wrapped up in there. Inner space. Non-resistance, non-judgment, and non-attachment are the three aspects of true freedom and enlightened living. So that's non-resistance, non-judgment, and non-attachment. Once you see the transience of all things and the inevitability of change, you can enjoy the pleasures of the world while they last without fear of loss or anxiety about the future. When you are detached, you gain a high vantage point from which you can view the events in your life instead of being trapped inside them. The recognition that this too shall pass brings detachment instead of being, and with detachment, another dimension opens in your life, inner space. Freedom is arising in inner space. It comes as a stillness, a subtle space deep within you, even in the face of something seemingly bad. Suddenly, there is space around the event. And from that space emanates a peace that is not of this world, because this world is form, and the peace is space. This is the peace of God. All self-created suffering comes to an end. Wouldn't that be nice? All our self-created suffering comes to an end? And isn't all suffering created by ourselves? We don't blame somebody else? Okay. Object consciousness needs to be balanced by space consciousness for sanity to return to our planet and for humanity to fulfill its destiny. The arising of space consciousness is the next stage in the evolution of humanity. The arising of space consciousness. So that means that we're diminishing the ego and expanding into space consciousness. To be aware of the little quiet things, however, you need to be quiet inside. A high degree of alertness is required. Be still, look, listen, be present. Here's another mind twister. Every experience has three possible ingredients: sense perceptions, thoughts or mental images, and emotions. So we've got sense perceptions, input, what we do with inside, and then how we express that energy that goes back out. So who is the experience? You are. The experiencer, you are. And who are you? Consciousness. And what is consciousness? That question cannot be answered. The moment you answer it, you have falsified it, made it into another object. That space is the life that I am. It is timeless. I am timeless, eternal. Being aware of your breathing takes attention away from thinking and creates space. It is one way of generating consciousness. One conscious breath, 2 or 3 would be even better, taken many times a day, is an excellent way of bringing space into your life. Conscious breathing. Just momentary now and then. Being aware of your breath forces you into the present moment. I mean, that's great. You know, it's worth just sitting down for a second, anywhere you are, and just focus on your breath. Be in the now of your breath. The key to all inner transformation. Whenever you are conscious of the breath, you are absolutely present. Wow, that's so easy. Another mind twister. Stillness is really another word for space. Becoming conscious of stillness whenever you encounter it in our lives will connect us with the formless and timeless dimension within ourselves. Stillness has no form. That is why through thinking, we cannot become aware of it. We cannot become aware of stillness thinking about it. Because then we're thinking, we don't have stillness. Being still is to be conscious without thought, kind of like meditation. When you are still, you are who you were before you temporarily assumed the physical and mental form called a person. Right. Listen to this. When you are still, you are who you were before you temporarily assumed the physical and mental form called a person. Yow.
What?
Yeah. What? Can you say that another way, please? The most important thing to realize is this. Your life has inner purpose and outer purpose. Inner purpose concerns being and is primary. Outer purpose concerns doing and is secondary. Address the question of how to align your outer purpose and inner purpose in your life. Your inner purpose is to awaken. Inner and outer, however, are deeply intertwined. Finding and living in alignment with the inner purpose is the foundation for your outer purpose. It is the basis for true success. Finding and living in alignment with your inner purpose is the foundation for your outer purpose. So inner purpose. What is the purpose of my life? Front of the book. Find that. If you can figure that out, you can build everything else on top of it. And that's what he says will be the basis for true success. And awakening. Some of us have some awakenings. Awakening is a shift in consciousness in which thinking and awareness separate. Instead of being lost in your thinking, when you are awake, you recognize yourself as the awareness behind it. Awareness is conscious connection with universal intelligence. Another word for it is presence. Consciousness without thought. The initiation of the awakening process is an act of grace. You cannot make it happen, nor can you prepare yourself for it or accumulate credits toward it. Well, this is kind of unfortunate because I've met a lot of people who said, God, I'd like to have a spiritual awakening. What can I do? I said, oh, well, you can start planning it. And he's saying, nah, sorry. Just go about your business. But I think if you spend more of your life in your inner realm, that you increase the chances of it happening. In other words, you have some receptivity. Only the first awakening, the first glimpse of consciousness without thought, happens by grace, without any doing on your part. If you find this book incomprehensible or meaningless, it has not happened to you. If something within you responds to it, however, if you somehow recognize the truth in it, it means that the process of awakening has begun. For some people, the reading of this book will initiate the awakening process. For others, the function of this book is to help them recognize that they have already begun to awaken and to intensify and accelerate the process. Another function of this book is to help people recognize the ego within them whenever it tries to regain control and obscure the rising awareness. With the grace of awakening comes responsibility. Opening yourself to the emerging consciousness and bringing its light into the world then becomes the primary purpose of your life. Wow. So if you become awakening, you got a job. You got a responsibility. And I think for people who have become awakened, it's like we said, there's no going back, but it's also gets fully embraced to the soul, and it's something we want to share. Fulfilling your primary purpose is laying the foundation for a new reality, a new earth. Once the foundation is there, your external purpose becomes charged with spiritual power, because your aims and intentions will be one with the evolutionary impulse of the universe. Or as I say, you're going within the flow of divine energy, not across it or against it. The stronger the ego, the stronger the sense of separateness between people. The only actions that do not cause opposing reactions are those that are aimed at the good for all. The only actions that do not cause opposing reactions are the ones that are aimed at the good for all. They are inclusive, not exclusive. They join, they don't separate. They are not for my country, but for all humanity. Not for my religion, but for the emergence of consciousness in all human beings. Not for my species, but for all sentient beings and all of nature. Here's another short mind twister. Consciousness is timeless and therefore does not evolve. It was never born and it does not die. Think about that tonight. Awakened doing, in quotations. Love that term. Awakened doing is the alignment of your outer purpose, what you do, with your inner purpose, awakening and staying awake. Through awakened doing, you become one with the ongoing presence of the universe. Consciousness flows through you into this world. Consciousness flows through you into this world. You become one with the ongoing purpose of the universe. It flows into your thoughts and inspires them. It flows into what you do and guides and empowers it. Remind yourself, awakened doing. I think it's a great mantra. There are three modalities in which consciousness can flow through you into the world, thus aligning yourself with the creative power of the universe. Those three modalities: acceptance, enjoyment, and enthusiasm. Acceptance. You willingly do what the moment requires you to do. Enjoyment. The peace that comes with your surrendered actions turns into a sense of aliveness. And enthusiasm. With the deep enjoyment of what you do, you also have the vision of an added element of a goal or vision that you work toward. You need to be vigilant. You need to make sure that at least one of these qualities operates whenever you do anything at all. You've got to have acceptance or enjoyment or enthusiasm in it, something, to keep it aligned with the presence of the universe. When the creative power of the universe becomes conscious of itself, it manifests as joy. I used to have a hard time differentiating what is joy from happiness and all that, but now I understand in Tolle's interpretation, joy is really spiritual happiness, not mind happiness. Joy is spiritual happiness. Awakened consciousness then takes over from ego and begins to run your life. At the height of creative activity fueled by enthusiasm, there will be enormous intensity and energy behind what you do. Enthusiasm and ego cannot coexist. Feel yourself being an opening through which energy flows from the unmanifested source of all life through you for the benefit of all. You cannot manifest what you want. You can only manifest what you have. The outward movement into form does not express itself with equal intensity in all people. Some feel a strong urge to build, create, become involved, achieve, make an impact upon the world. If they are conscious, these people in whom the outer movement is strong will be highly creative. Those creators that anchor the new consciousness on this planet, I call higher frequency holders. Everybody's pretty much heard the reference to frequency and vibration and all that. So he says, here you are, if you're aligned with this and you're allowing the energy of the universe to flow through your consciousness and you're sharing it with all, you are a higher frequency holder. We could be a HFH, little buttons when we go to conferences. They are here to generate consciousness through the activities of daily life, through their interactions with others, as well as just being. Is this you? Your interactivities with others and just being, sharing the spirit of the universe? A new heaven and earth are arising within you at this moment. Who are the meek that shall inherit the earth? The meek are the egoless. They are those who have awakened to their essential true nature as consciousness and recognize that essence in all others. They are those who have awakened to their essential true nature as consciousness and recognized that essence in all others, all life forms. A new species is arising on the planet. It is arising now. And you are it. That's the conclusion of my reading from the book. I just have a couple of takeaways I'd like to share with you. The past has no power to stop you from being present now. All that is required to become free of the ego is to be aware of it, since awareness and ego are incompatible. Life will give you whatever experience is most helpful for the evolution of your consciousness. So we can piss and moan about everything, but as I like to teach, every experience has a learning opportunity, and it takes a conscious person to find it. Making yourself right and others wrong is one of the principal egoic mind patterns, one of the main forms of unconsciousness. How you react to people and situations, especially when challenges arise, is the best indicator of how deeply you know yourself. Non-reaction to the ego in others is one of the most effective ways not only of going beyond ego in yourself, but also of dissolving the collective human ego. Another word for non-reaction is forgiveness. Only the truth of who you are, if realized, will set you free. Who you are. I'm going to wind up here toward the end with a couple of my interpretations. Tolle helps us to gain insights into our answer to the question, what is my life purpose? Reading through these passages, I think it allows us to see the opportunities that we have for reorienting out of an ego-driven life into a conscious life. And that is what's going to help us understand better what our purpose is. Certainly our purpose is not to be an egoic maniac. So it must be something different. We have to learn how to migrate ourselves out of that. Egoic resistance to acceptance and forgiveness creates emotional pain and suffering. So anytime you feel like you're developing resistance to something or by foregoing forgiveness creates pain and suffering. So there's a choice there. You can be disconscious about it and make the unloving choice, or you can be conscious about it and make the loving choice. You have to be in the now to do that. Otherwise, you're being run by your ego. When you disempower your ego and consciously align with the laws of nature, align within the flow of divine truth, you can experience heaven on earth because the cosmos always conspires for you, never against you. So anytime you think that something's working against you, that is your ego speaking. The cosmos, the universe, never conspires for you. There are natural laws out there that are immutable, and they don't conspire against anybody. But the people who are happy and successful and spirits that move on, evolve further into their godliness, are the ones that go with the flow of the energy and don't resist it. Non-resistance. Recognizing, accepting, and sharing the truth of the now moment, all it is, creates a clear inner presence in which peace, love, and happiness can thrive. That is, recognizing, accepting, and sharing the truth. I'd like to close with one of my favorite saying from the Vietnamese Buddhist philosopher Thich Nhat Hanh. I have arrived. I am home. In the here, I am solid. I am free. In the ultimate, I dwell. Okay, I'd like to wrap up with a very short exercise for all of us. I'd like you to close your eyes and relax for a second. And we're going to have a short call and response affirmation here. So please relax, take a deep breath. Feel your being as it resonates with each message. And as a group, repeat after me. I am blessed.
I am blessed.
We are one.
We are one.
Love is the answer.
Love is the answer.
Okay, thank you. Open your eyes, please. Take these messages into your heart, please. Okay, that is my Speak At You session. Thank you.